Spiritual awakening often leaves you feeling like a stranger among your own friends and family. This isn't a personal failure. It's a natural response to deep inner change. Research shows that as your priorities shift toward self-discovery, the relationships and social systems around you can struggle to adapt. What once felt familiar now feels distant, and the connections you relied on may start to weaken. Your values and awareness begin to change, but your world doesn't always shift with you. This friction isn't just in your head. There are real structural reasons behind it. We'll see why this happens and how understanding the process can help you honor your own path and prepare for more authentic connections ahead. As you move through spiritual awakening, you might notice that everyday interactions start to feel different. Maybe you're at a family dinner or catching up with friends, and suddenly the conversations that once felt natural now seem awkward or empty. You share a new insight or ask a deeper question, and the response is silence. A quick change of subject, or even a subtle look that says you've crossed an invisible line. It's as if a transparent barrier has appeared, one you can't see, but you definitely feel. This invisible wall is a common experience for people whose priorities and perspectives are shifting, especially when those around them are still rooted in familiar patterns. It's easy to assume that growing spiritually will bring you closer to others, but the early stages of awakening often do the opposite. There's a widespread belief that awakening should lead to instant harmony and connection, but in reality, it often creates distance. You might find yourself sitting among friends, feeling like you no longer belong in the same story. This can leave you feeling confused, even questioning your own worth. If you're wondering why things suddenly feel so strained, know that you're not alone. This is a normal part of the process. Imagine yourself at a gathering, listening to the same stories and routines that once brought comfort. Now you notice the repetition, the lack of genuine curiosity, or the way conversations avoid anything deeper. What used to satisfy you now feels lacking. This isn't about thinking you're better than anyone else. It's simply the result of your inner world changing while those around you remain the same. This friction is natural, and it often shows up as subtle shifts in how people interact with you. Research on spiritual awakening highlights that as your values and awareness evolve, relationships may naturally change. You might outgrow certain friendships or feel the need to step back from connections that no longer align with your new priorities. For example, Jagjot Singh describes losing friends during his own awakening, noticing that interactions which didn't support growth began to fade away. This isn't because anyone is at fault, but because the foundation of your relationships, shared beliefs, habits, and expectations, has started to shift. Every social group operates on unwritten rules and familiar rhythms. There's a pattern to jokes, routines, and even disagreements. When you start questioning these patterns or bringing up new perspectives, it can disrupt the group's sense of stability. Even if you try to go along with old routines, you might feel out of step, as if you're now playing a different tune. Attempts to share your evolving ideas may be met with polite indifference, deflection, or even concern disguised as humor. Someone might laugh off your comment or ask, "Are you okay?" out of genuine confusion or discomfort. No one prepares us for this kind of disconnection. It's common to internalize the discomfort, wondering if you're the problem. But this invisible wall isn't a sign that you failed socially or personally. In fact, it's a reflection of how relationships depend on what's shared and familiar. Our brains are wired to seek social stability. Belonging has always been tied to survival. When you bring new ideas or priorities into a group, it can feel threatening to that unspoken order, and people may unconsciously try to restore the old balance. The more you change, the more it can seem like others are changing too, sometimes subtly, sometimes in more obvious ways. You might notice friends steering conversations away from anything heavy, or even withdrawing from your life altogether. This isn't about blame. It's simply what happens when the connections that once held you together start to stretch and thin as your inner world evolves. If you felt this invisible wall, know that it doesn't mean you're broken or that anyone else is wrong for staying where they are. These forces shape everyone's experience, whether they realize it or not. Feeling isolated or misunderstood is a clear sign that your transformation is real and significant. Recognizing that this is a common part of awakening can help you release self-blame. There's a structure to every relationship, and when your foundation shifts, it's natural for the dynamics to change. What's often surprising is how even those closest to you, the people you thought would always understand, can find it difficult to bridge this new divide. Sometimes, the strongest bonds are the ones most affected when your inner world starts to move in a new direction. When you start to change on the inside, it's common to notice that friends and family, those you once felt closest to, become uneasy or distant. You might expect that sharing your spiritual growth would bring understanding or encouragement, but instead you're met with awkward silences or polite disengagement. You bring up something that feels meaningful to you, hoping for a real conversation, but what comes back is a blank look or a quick change of subject. Sometimes someone says you've changed, and it lands like a verdict, not a compliment. This experience isn't rare. Relationships are often built on shared values, routines, and the comfort of the familiar. When your perspective shifts, even if your outward behavior looks similar, others sense that something fundamental has changed. The weekend rituals, the inside jokes, or the shared complaints that used to bond you can start to feel less relevant. As your interests and priorities move in a new direction, the old ways of connecting may quietly fall away. Research on group cohesion shows that shared values are what help social bonds stay strong. When those values change, the connection can weaken, often without anyone meaning for it to happen. People don't usually talk about this openly, but difference can feel threatening. Even small changes, a friend who suddenly seems less interested, a family member who avoids deeper topics, are ways of trying to restore a sense of normalcy. It's a quiet, almost automatic response to protect the group's stability. The sense of drifting apart isn't just theoretical. Many people going through spiritual awakening describe feeling like outsiders in their most familiar circles. It's not that you think you're better than anyone else. It's that your priorities have shifted, and what once felt meaningful now feels out of place. You might notice that friends no longer confide in you as they used to, or that family members stick to safe topics, unsure how to respond to your new outlook. The roles you played, listener, advisor, partner in shared routines, may no longer fit as easily. Often, there's an undercurrent of fear. Loved ones may want to protect what feels stable and familiar. When you change, they may worry about losing the version of you they've always known, or fear you'll judge their choices. This isn't a lack of love, but a reaction to the disruption of habits and expectations. Spiritual awakening also brings a need for solitude and inner work. Processing emotions, reflecting on your life, or sitting with uncomfortable truths can take time, and you might find yourself needing more space than before. Friends or family can interpret this as rejection or distance, especially if you used to be available for every gathering or conversation. Setting new boundaries to protect your growth can be misunderstood as withdrawal or self-absorption. Jajot Singh's story offers a clear example. During his awakening, he resigned from his IT job and found that friendships faded. Not out of anger, but because he no longer valued small talk or the pursuit of material status. Singh noticed that when honesty and growth became his priorities, conversations that once felt easy now felt forced. He couldn't pretend to care about things that no longer mattered to him, and that discomfort led to distance. Over time, as his values changed, friends who didn't share those new priorities simply drifted away. Losing old connections can be painful. It's normal to want understanding from the people who matter most or to feel unsettled when familiar relationships change, but often these shifts are not about you being wrong for growing. They're about the natural way that groups hold together through shared values. When those values evolve, the bonds can loosen, even if no one intends for it to happen. Recognizing this can help you let go of self-blame and see that these changes are a sign of real transformation. As you move through this process, you may start to notice that even the most ordinary conversations begin to feel different. What once brought comfort or belonging can suddenly seem empty or out of place, and you might wonder why these everyday interactions no longer satisfy. You might find yourself in the middle of a familiar group chat or a routine call, noticing that something fundamental has shifted. The conversation moves through predictable topics, the weather, a new show, local news, Where you once joined in without a second thought, now you pause. There's a quiet question in the back of your mind. What are we actually saying to each other? It's not that you suddenly dislike these people or think you're above them. Instead, you're becoming aware of the patterns, what some call scripts, that shape most social interactions. These scripts once brought comfort, but now they feel strangely hollow, as if you're watching a play you've outgrown. This shift is a common sign of spiritual awakening. As your self-awareness grows, you begin to notice the automatic ways people keep conversations safe and familiar. You might catch yourself tuning out during small talk or feeling restless when the topic stays on the surface. It isn't about arrogance or being antisocial. Many people on this path report that as their values and priorities change, their brains simply process social cues differently. The old routines that once felt natural now seem disconnected from what matters to you. You're not alone in this. Countless people have described the same sense of seeing through the roles and rituals that once made up their social world. Imagine a typical scene. You're at a gathering, and someone brings up a bit of gossip or a harmless joke. Everyone laughs, but you find yourself wondering why it feels empty. Maybe you try to steer the conversation towards something more meaningful, only to be met with blank stares or a quick return to safer topics. The sense of being out of sync grows. You might notice your own body language shifting, fidgeting, looking away, or even withdrawing altogether. Over time, these moments add up, and you start to feel like an outsider in places where you used to belong. This isn't just about conversation. Spiritual awakening often comes with a heightened sensitivity to both physical and emotional energy. You might feel the tension in a room more acutely, or pick up on the unspoken feelings beneath people's words. What used to be harmless small talk can now feel draining, even overwhelming. Many awakened people describe this as a kind of emotional static, a sense that surface-level exchanges no longer nourish them. The medical medium and thinkers like Alan Watts have noted that this increased sensitivity can make casual interactions exhausting, pushing individuals to seek out deeper, more authentic connections. The desire for something real grows stronger as you move further along your path. You might find yourself questioning not just what's being said, but why these routines persist. Are people genuinely interested or just filling the silence? Are these topics distractions from something more important? These questions can create a quiet distance between you and those who haven't experienced a similar shift. Even when you try to share your new perspective, you might be met with misunderstanding or gentle mockery. This is a common and often painful part of awakening. As your perspective changes, others may struggle to relate, leaving you feeling even more isolated. Alan Watts once described how, after years of moving through social circles, he discovered a joy in solitude that freed him from the pressure of small talk. He realized that stepping away from the constant need for surface-level connection allowed him to hear his own thoughts more clearly and to find meaning in his own company. For many, this stage of awakening brings a similar realization. The discomfort you feel isn't a flaw, but a sign that you're ready for deeper, more genuine connections. You might wonder if you'll ever enjoy casual conversation again, or if this new sense of distance is permanent. In truth, this discomfort is a natural part of your growth. It signals that your mind and heart are searching for something more, something that matches the depth you discovered within yourself. When you recognize that this is a normal stage of your journey, you can give yourself permission to seek out relationships and conversations that truly resonate. Have you noticed small talk feeling hollow? You're not alone. This stage of discomfort can feel isolating, but it's also a sign that you're moving towards something more meaningful. The urge to step back from the superficial is not just a side effect of awakening. It's an invitation to listen more deeply to yourself. In the quiet that follows, something new begins to take shape, even if it's not clear yet what that will be. Solitude at this stage isn't just an absence of company. It's a turning point. This is the crucible of awakening, where isolation moves from being something you endure to something that quietly reshapes you. Many people misunderstand this phase, seeing it as a setback or a sign that something has gone wrong. But if you look closely, you'll notice that this quiet period actually creates the conditions for deep inner work. Alan Watts once pointed out that society often favors constant noise and distraction, making silence and solitude feel like an oddity. Yet, It's in the quiet that we find the freedom to see ourselves honestly, without the pressure to perform for others. After old friendships fade or daily interactions lose their meaning, it's normal to wonder if you're simply broken or if you've made a mistake. You might worry that this new distance is permanent or that needing time alone is a flaw. But what's really happening is something essential. As highlighted in work on spiritual awakening, deep transformation demands time alone. Time away from the noise and expectations of others. This isn't a punishment. It's a necessary part of the process. When the usual social roles fall away, you're left with space to ask questions you might have avoided, to sit with feelings that don't fit into your old life, and to notice what truly belongs to you. Solitude gives you a rare chance to examine what you've carried with you, beliefs, habits, and wounds that may have gone unquestioned for years. In this space, there's no need to keep up appearances. You have the freedom to be unconditionally honest, to confront fears and desires without needing approval or validation. This can feel uncomfortable at first. There's often an urge to fill the silence, to reach for distractions, or to judge yourself for not being more productive in a visible way. But over time, you start to notice something else. The quiet isn't empty. It's full of small discoveries, moments of self-trust, glimpses of clarity, and a growing sense of peace that doesn't depend on anyone else. Research supports what many spiritual traditions have long taught. Time alone is strongly linked to greater self-awareness and creativity. Without the constant pull of outside opinions, you can finally hear your own thoughts. You might notice patterns you want to change or discover interests and curiosities that never had space before. This is also when old pain can surface, memories, disappointments, or regrets you've carried quietly. Solitude offers the chance to process these experiences, not by pushing them away, but by letting them move through you without interruption. The process isn't always comfortable, but it's deeply necessary. You don't have to disappear from the world to let solitude do its work. The real shift happens when you enter a deeper relationship with yourself. This means being willing to see your imperfections, to let go of old roles, and to accept that your worth doesn't depend on outside validation. The freedom that comes with this honesty is subtle but powerful. As you become more comfortable in your own company, you start to see that you're whole, not because of anything external, but simply because you exist. In this crucible, old beliefs and attachments begin to loosen. The absence of constant distraction forces you to face what you've avoided, whether it's a painful memory or a long-held assumption about who you should be. Instead of losing yourself, you start to uncover who you really are beneath the layers of expectation. This is where real transformation takes root. The emptiness of solitude isn't a void, it's a space where new growth becomes possible. As you spend more time alone, you may notice subtle changes. You become more selective about the kinds of relationships and conversations you want. There's less need to edit yourself or hide your curiosity. The connections that come after this period often feel more genuine because they aren't built on old expectations or the need to fit in. You begin to attract people who resonate with the person you're becoming, not just the person you used to be. Solitude works like a crucible, challenging but essential. It strips away what no longer fits and leaves behind a clearer, more resilient sense of self. While it may look like loss from the outside, the stillness of this stage carries the seeds of everything you've been searching for. What happens next is shaped by the foundation you build here. If you're in this phase, it's important to recognize that the journey doesn't end with isolation. There's a path forward, a way to move from solitude to authentic connection. As you move through this stage, it helps to focus on 3 practical steps. First, practice deep listening and receiving, using meditation or gratitude to reconnect with yourself and others. Second, honor your time alone as a necessary part of transformation, not a setback. Third, seek out relationships that value your new sense of depth and authenticity. If solitude has changed the way you see yourself or your connections, share one insight in the comments below. Your story may help someone else feel less alone. Remember, the wall you've felt is not a dead end. It's the beginning of true belonging.